Happy Thursday. We are back with another live stream with DD Geopolitics. I am finally back with John after he had a little hiatus, and myself as well. We have a kind of a big episode planned for today. We somehow snagged Scott Ritter and Nick at the last minute to come talk to us about the ceasefire that may never come to fruition, but we will talk about it anyway. John, how are you, and how are you feeling about this ceasefire?
I'm doing great. We're only a few days away from the inauguration, too. So a whole new era of chaos in American foreign policy is right around the corner. Interesting timing with the ceasefire for sure. I'm super excited about the episode today. Spoiler alert. But yeah, we have Scott Ritter and Nick Cruz coming on. I actually had one of my neighbors the other day ask if I've interviewed Scott Ritter before. And it just so happened that this morning, Sarah texted me and says we're interviewing Scott. So I guess it was fate. But how's everybody doing?
What's poppin', fam?
Welcome. And thank you so much for Scott for coming after your long drive. There's actually been a lot of news while you were driving, so we might all be surprised together. But just to do a quick recap of what is in the ceasefire that is being proposed. We'll just put that out there. We have a 3-phase ceasefire. Phase 1, 42 days to start on the 19th, which is Sunday. Hamas will release 33 Israeli hostages in exchange for roughly 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. Humanitarian aid will be allowed to enter the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces will withdraw from northern Gaza, which is a ghost town anyway, and allow Palestinians to return to their homes. And then phase 2 will begin after 42 days. What we know now is that both sides one side is very happy with it. It seems to have some reprieve, and one side isn't. But before we get into everybody's feelings about it, I just want to know what you guys think of the actual ceasefire objectively, what the requirements are in it, and what it means politically, how much you guys think the Trump administration was involved, and sort of like what were the mechanisms that turned the screws here?
Nick, you want to lead off?
I'll start first, and then I would love to hear what Scott Ritter thinks as well. I was covering this live on RBN, and a lot of people was calling me a pessimist about this because as soon as I heard about the ceasefire, the first thing I thought was like, okay, what are the parameters that the Israelis agreed to? And then there was a 6-week pause, and as soon as I see that, and I know the history of Israelis, like the rats they are, they tend to back away from ceasefires. But before it was actually broke that Israelis were down to agree with this deal, when it was rumored that it was considering this deal, there was massive protest in the streets in Israel, where there was a bunch of settler colonial fascists who was arguing and protesting the government against the concept of peace. And they were chanting in the streets that we want an opportunity to win this war. A devastating image that you will never hear in Western media when they pretend that Israel can never do any wrong. Meanwhile, Ben-Gvir is absolutely furious because 2 days ago, he said that accepting a ceasefire deal that keep Hamas in power and leave Israeli hostages in Gaza like it would, that is tantamount to a surrender. That what Ben-Gvir said. So you had the Likud party and even a lot of liberal elements within Israel that was furious at the concept of Gaza not being destroyed, Israel not achieving their military objectives. So as it is right now, and news is moving so fast, they have this big upcoming meeting that's going to be in the morning in Israel between Ben-Gvir and Benjamin Netanyahu, because apparently Benjamin Netanyahu has been begging Ben-Gvir not to resign because this is like a line in the sand. So right now, Western media is pretending everything is gravy. Meanwhile, the Israeli government is in complete shambles. So that's my initial thought. I would love to hear what you guys think, because there's a lot of breakdown. I can rant on this all day, but so I would love to hear what the panel thinks about what's going on.
Scott, over to you.
Over to me. Well, my understanding is that, and I have to tell you guys that I've been very busy the last couple of days, so my news consumption has been limited to various 5-minute scans of my Twitter feed, or X feed as it's now known. But my understanding is that, and anytime I say something that's wrong, please raise your hand and say, no, that's wrong. But that the deal that's here is basically the framework is similar to the deal that was negotiated back in May, that we're talking about that framework. So with that as a starting point, understand this. This is not a deal that was negotiated by Donald Trump. This is a Biden administration deal that had been put on the table back in May, should have been implemented in May, but was rejected by the Netanyahu government. I also understand that as all of this drama is taking place, Netanyahu is being pursued by Israeli courts with very serious charges regarding the hostages and regarding mishandling of classified information. So, Seymour Hersh wrote about this a while back in his Substack, and I have every reason to believe that what Seymour Hersh wrote was 100% dead on accurate, and it seems to be reflected by the reality on the ground. Netanyahu is screwed. Okay, so let's quit talking about Netanyahu as a politically viable element. He is screwed, and if he's left to his own volition, he will die politically, and he will die in prison. All right, so now we brought that all up. The Blinken administration, it's a more honest assessment, but the Biden administration was desperate to get something done here. Left to their own volition, nothing would have happened. Netanyahu would have dragged this out. Ben-Gvir would have stabbed everybody in the back. We know that the only reason there hasn't been a deal is because of Israel. Israel is singularly and solely responsible for them not having a deal. And for any Israelis watching, that means that Netanyahu is responsible for every dead hostage that died from May until today. Benjamin Netanyahu murdered them. Ben-Gvir murdered them, not Hamas. Oh, by the way, one of the things I read today is that Hamas sent out a signal that said, hey, Israel, you're still bombing us, which is what you do because you're genocidal maniacs. But the place you bombed today was where we started to bring in the hostages, and you're going to kill them. You're going to kill them on the last couple days. This is the reality. Now, the Biden administration has been weak against Israel because apparently everything they say about the Israeli lobby controlling American policymaking and the Biden administration be totally beholden to the Israeli lobby is true. Here's the interesting twist. Donald Trump, after he got elected, started assembling a cabinet that everybody said was even worse. Oh my God, these are proto-Zionists. These are the worst people in the world, the worst Zionists in the world, and Donald Trump has sold out 100%. Donald Trump sent an envoy in to monitor these negotiations because Donald Trump had said the war will be over before I come in or there will be hell to pay. Now, everybody assumed that hell to pay meant that he was going to blow the crap out of Hamas, which is sort of an impossibility because Hamas has been getting the crap blown out of it anyways, and apparently he hasn't done well. You talked about withdrawing from northern Gaza. You understand that northern Gaza is a death trap for Israel. You do know that. You do know in the last couple of days, Israel's taken extremely heavy casualties there because Hamas is underground, and they pop up and they blow them up and they shoot them, then they go back underground. Israel hasn't won anything here. There is no military victory here. The Zionist extremists can protest in the streets saying, give us a chance to win the war. Guys, your army had 16 months. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it with all the weapons. Couldn't do it. Hamas kicked your ass. And the reality is that Israel is saying they want a ceasefire without achieving a single objective. The two major objectives of this conflict were, one, destroy Hamas militarily. Hamas today has more damn fighters today than they did when the conflict started. Fail. Two, destroy Hamas politically. Well, good Lord, you're negotiating with Hamas. It seems that you have failed to do that as well. Israel has failed across the board. The ultimate Zionist, Donald Trump, sends his ultimate Zionist envoy to the failed negotiations. And according to Haaretz, sat down with the Israelis and the Israelis started talking, said, sit down and shut up. Ah, how dare you speak to the Israelis that way? You're a Zionist. They own you. And the Israelis tried to speak. He said, I said, shut up. You will enter this agreement. This agreement will be inked or you're, and I won't say the word, but you're effed. That's literally the conversation that was had. You're effed. You, Israel, not Hamas. You. Apparently, Donald Trump, the proto-Zionist who has surrounded himself with proto-Zionists, has said in the past, and I've mentioned this, that when it comes to the problem in the Middle East, he said it can be resolved through negotiations, but there's one side that doesn't want to negotiate. And it wasn't Hamas. It was the Israelis. And that's Trump before October 7th. Now Trump is reposting Jeffrey Sachs saying that Netanyahu is a lying sack of crap and that the Israelis are the horrible people who get us involved in wars. Do you understand what just happened here? A man who isn't yet president sent an envoy that has no authority under the law, and he took control of a negotiation, and he said, close the frickin' deal. Now, Netanyahu's playing catch-up. There's a lot of stuff going on because behind the scenes, the Likud party has said, we don't want to do this. We don't want a deal. Ben-Gvir says, we don't want a deal. Netanyahu's government can collapse. He doesn't want a deal. Netanyahu doesn't want a deal, but they're going forward with the deal. Now, they may try to sabotage it, but I'm telling you right now, the signal that will be sent is on January 20th, if this deal isn't going forward, you're screwed. Netanyahu, we will pull the plug on everything. If you want the courts to stop going after you, if you don't want to rot in jail the rest of your life, you are literally screwed. We will make sure all of that happens because I, Donald Trump, through my envoy, told you to sit down and shut up, solve this problem, collapse your government. I don't care. But this ceasefire is going to go forward. Now, is this a perfect ceasefire? Nope, not at all. Are there problems? Yep. But here's my thing, and I want to say this to all the people in your chat. I'm not reading the chats right now. I could care less anymore because I just don't care. If you're in the chat saying this is a bullshit ceasefire, you're against it, screw you. You know and I'm not saying anybody's saying that. I'm saying that I've seen that I've done a couple podcasts and I've seen people say, this is horrible. The children in the camps are cheering in the streets. That's all you need to know. If the Palestinians who live in Gaza are happy about this, that's all you need to know. Unless you live in Gaza, unless you've been bombed, unless you've been starved, unless you have seen your family slaughtered, shut the F up. You don't matter. The only thing that matters is from the perspective of the Palestinian people who live in Gaza, who are saying, thank God we have aid coming in. Thank God the bombs will stop falling. Thank God we can look to a future where the collective slaughter of our people stops. That's where I stand on this. I understand there's a lot of missing pieces and that I don't have access to everything and that there's different perspectives. But for me, the only perspective, there's only two things that count here. One, Trump delivered. He hasn't sealed the deal because he's not president yet. But he said, and I sort of mocked him about it. I talked about the perfect phone call and all this stuff. I mock Trump all the time. It appears that on this case, he fooled us all because we thought he was about pressuring Hamas. And it turns out Trump was about pressuring Israel, which is something American presidents haven't done since the first Gulf War. When George H.W. Bush had Paul Wolfowitz, who is a very Zionist guy, deliver the following message to the Israeli prime minister. Here's the phone number to the White House. When you guys are ready to seriously talk, call us. Until then, we don't want to have anything to do with you. We're moving on. Trump seems to be cut from that same piece of cloth. Everybody thought he was sold out, that he got bought out, that he was owned. Having his guy tell Benjamin Netanyahu to sit down and shut up, that's not being owned. That's owning. And then the other thing is, my dogs are agreeing. Thank you, guys. But I have to calm down because I just got home and they're excited to see me. And then when daddy starts getting all wound up, they get wound up. So I'll calm down. And then the other thing is the Palestinian, that perspective, the perspective of the person on the street. If I saw the people on the street saying this is a bad deal, I would say it's a bad deal because obviously there's a problem with it. Is for all the faults of this ceasefire, 42 days, 3-phase, whatever you want to say, when you got Palestinians cheering, dancing, crying, happy, singing, that's sort of what that tells me that we have to pay attention to this thing as a positive thing.
Yeah, and I actually agree with that. And I said that on my stream, and I had a viral tweet where I said I'm extremely happy for everyone in Gaza. I just personally want to see Israel destroyed. But there, just to Scott's point, there was a story I read on Twitter. It was a very viral tweet where someone explained how there was toddlers. There was a 2-year-old that was celebrating a ceasefire, and the father, who I read, I don't know if you saw this as well, but the father explained that the toddler understood the concept of a ceasefire at the age of 2 years old. She knew what a ceasefire was more than she knew what her father's name was. So that's why I agree with Scott. Well, I'm extremely happy for people in Gaza to get any sort of relief after the hell that they have went through. But as my part as American, this is what we need everyone to get serious on. I think everyone on this panel has done this. We need to embrace being the enemy from within. Because
that's what I said. Because everybody said the same thing. They're like, "You're not happy for the Palestinians." I was like, "No, I am. And what I want for them is to feel the immense amount of joy that they don't have to worry about bombs and feel all that. What our job is to do now is to look at it objectively and hold these people's feet to the fire and make sure."
I'm glad you see what I'm saying. Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. And I will always advocate for what's best for the people in Gaza. But we got to keep our eyes on the prize, because while they can celebrate, I'm very worried, like just because the recent stories of Netanyahu picking this up. But overall, like Scott said, it's a good thing because they was able to get this sort of relief. And another point that Scott made, which is a good point, and this is why Trump, we got to keep an eye on him. But I think Israel took the opportunity to give Trump this win for the same reason that Scott outlined, that the Palestinian resistance is a big reason for this win. And I would love to hear your opinion on this, Scott, as well. But my take is that Israel definitely 100% lost and have been weakened geopolitically. But the axis of resistance definitely didn't win. Like, the axis of resistance is extremely weak, and they're in shambles right now. But they have accomplished their goal, because the reason why Ben-Gvir is furious is because this ceasefire deal requires Israel complete withdrawal from the north. And as Scott was saying, this is only possible because the IDF was getting their shit kicked in, my friends. Do you guys think that there was even be a possibility for Israel for looking for an out if they wasn't getting? Imagine they was just dominating, as if like the narrative they want us to believe. You think there was even a favor this deal? They took this deal because there are a ton of grieving Israeli settler colonialists. They are a very casualty-averse society as it is. A ton of dead IDF soldiers are coming back home. You had the incoming Trump administration that want to do something about Iran. So we got to remember, they also want to, after seeing they took an L in Gaza, they want to redirect their attention in Iran and Syria. We see the military operation that's going on in Syria. So there's so many different levels to the story as people within the empire that we had to keep our eyes on. But Scott, I do 100% agree with you. I'm extremely happy for the people in Gaza. This is just the beginning of the story. I think Donald Trump, and once again, this pure speculation to be clear, but I think one of the deals and one of the reasons why Israel is more likely to agree with this, because Trump can take this PR victory, and Miriam Alderson essentially bought the West Bank for $100 million. I see Donald Trump allowing Israel to continue their assaults on the West Bank. That I don't see any signs of slowing down. But that's what are your guys' thoughts, Sarah, Scott? Any thoughts?
What about you, John? What are your thoughts on the possible annexation of the West Bank and the recent uptick in violence there?
Well, I think that, I agree wholeheartedly with what Nick was saying. This has been a strategic defeat for Israel, but it certainly hasn't been a victory for the axis of resistance. I really like the way you kind of framed that. It's going to be a slog. And under the Trump administration, I expect to see a lot of the same rhetoric, despite the fact that I do fundamentally agree with Scott that there is this dynamic of pressure that the Trump administration is actually kind of uniquely suited to maybe exert over Israel by virtue of the fact that they've had a very supportive rhetoric of Israel in the past. So they're in a position of a lot of leverage to, I think, shift public opinion toward or against Israel. But I do think that the administration and a number of the people that will be figureheads in the Republican leadership in Congress will also continue to push, at least rhetorically, very strongly for Israel. And I think that will play a role in emboldening some of the forces and driving some of the contradictions within the occupied Palestine and the West Bank. And so I expect that settler violence to continue. I definitely expect the Palestinian resistance groups in the West Bank to take more of an active role. But I'm interested to get others' thoughts on that question as well. But just to end on this note, holding our leaders' feet to the fire is the most important thing that I think we have to do right now, regardless of who's in power. You know, it was very interesting to see Blinken today, and I think we should play that clip here in a second. But
we got clips galore.
Clips galore. This was the biggest black eye on the Biden administration, overseeing this genocide that they were complicit in step by step. And so I definitely see a strong interest from the Biden administration in wanting to make this ceasefire happen now, to kind of put a bookend on this disastrous foreign policy when it comes to Israel and Palestine. So maybe let's take a look at what Max Blumenthal had to say.
Let's talk about what first, because we're going chronologically, John. You're going to get me all out of whack. Let's see what Israel's been up to since the ceasefire started to get into the mainstream media. So that was just occupied or Gaza. They've also bombed Lebanon since the ceasefire announcement, aside from Lebanon's own ceasefire. And I mean, maybe you are happy for this, I don't know, but they bombed HTS yesterday morning in an I told you so moment. So Israel's going absolutely bonkers. And I don't
think about the kind of sick society, and Sarah, I'll let you finish, but think about the kind of sick society this is. Like most of the time, and you would think that when a country agrees to a ceasefire, that generally means that we want less death, that we want death to stop. Israel's like the only country, and they do it over and over again. They sign a ceasefire deal, and then they'll say, oh, the ceasefire is going to take place at the 20th. And they will take the time between now and when the ceasefire starts to kill as many Palestinians as possible, completely ruining the spirit of the ceasefire. Even though technically the ceasefire doesn't start until the stated date, the idea is to have less death. But Israelis, they see it as like a timer. Like, let's see how many people we can kill before the ceasefire takes place. And many times this happens. And then obviously that will infuriate the Palestinians, Hamas or someone will retaliate. And then Israel will reply, oh, they violated the ceasefire. So, sorry, Sarah, to your point, this is a tactic that Israel uses all the time.
Always.
Go ahead, Sarah.
And the kerfuffle of talking about the ceasefire is when they decided to bomb HTS. Important to know that HTS was going to disarm the Druze. Now, HTS has said we're going to disarm everybody to centralize power, which is to be expected and normal from a new government. And Israel said, no, you can stay in the places that we let you stay and disarm them, but you won't be disarming the Druze. So they bombed the shit out of HTS. They bombed southern Lebanon. They say Hezbollah is still there, and they're continuing to bomb Gaza. Also, someone has been, letting us know in the chat, the breaking news, the ceasefire is pretty much falling apart. Nick mentioned the government, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, which, I mean, really, we've got a Kurd, a Pole, and a Ukrainian running a country. What could go wrong? And Smotrich says, I'll tear the whole place down. And then Ben-Gvir says, our party will leave the coalition as soon as ceasefire takes effect, which will cause Netanyahu to lose his majority and for the government to fall apart. What say you?
I say January 20th. What's today's date?
The 16th. We got to get through 4 days.
No, you're missing the point. January 20th is the day that Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, can raise hell. Israel's doing nothing more than what everybody expected Israel to do. Understand that Israel didn't want this ceasefire. This is being imposed on them. That's why there's so much angst. You showed the video of Palestinian firefighters putting out fire and picking up bodies and all this stuff. You know, you could have shown that video yesterday before the ceasefire was announced, the day before, because that's what Israel does. The ceasefire isn't in place. And Israel didn't. This isn't as if Israel said, we want to bring an end to the death and destruction. We want a ceasefire. And because most of the time, you're right. When you talk about a ceasefire, then you have a good faith effort. As long as you don't move your troops around and try to exploit, a pause, we'll stop bombing you in good faith. There ain't nothing good. The only thing the Israelis are saying right now, the Israeli military is saying, kill every Hamas leader we can get our hands on. Kill everybody of interest to us before the ceasefire takes place. Maximum death, maximum destruction. That's what they're going to do because they don't want this ceasefire. They don't want it. And as you said, it would be perfect for them if they went and killed somebody big and Hamas went, and did something. And then they said, see, it's not us, it's Hamas. Let's blame them. But I have a feeling that Hamas is just going to take it because on the 19th, or what is it, the 19th, on the 19th, the ceasefire is supposed to kick in. I mean, I'm reading the same thing. How can, again, I don't mean to pick on the person writing that. I respect, but be careful with your spin. You can't say the ceasefire is dead before the ceasefire came in. Okay, the ceasefire there is no ceasefire right now. There's a negotiation taking place. There's an agreement that has to go back to the respective parties. Some people are talking about, it's a done deal, but it's not a done deal until the ceasefire takes effect. So don't sit here and send out a post that says, it's over, ceasefire's dead, Israel. It's the 16th. I bet you some phone calls will be made. I bet you that the same pressure that was put on Israel to get to this point will be put on again. Trump, if you think Trump's going to walk away from this and say, well, I gave it a good shot, but that's it, Israel wins. He didn't repost Jeffrey Sachs for nothing. All right? This is what Israel does. Israel is in a very weakened state. Israel is on the verge of total political collapse. Remember, before October 7th happened, the Israeli president came out and said, we're on the verge of a civil war. Not civil disruption, not civil unrest, civil war. Jew shooting Jew. That's where they were before October 7th. It is far worse today. Israel is a giant damn powder keg, and people are flicking matches at it. So this is what's to be expected. This is what Israel does, especially a dysfunctional Israel. Do you think Ben-Gvir was going to go gently into that good night? No. And so he's doing what he does. He's making these threats. And I'm fairly certain that the same envoy, who isn't really an envoy, because you can't be an envoy unless your guy's the president, is going to go back and sit down and say, Ben-Gvir is your problem. Solve it. But we will become your bigger problem on January 20th if this thing isn't resolved. Okay, fix it. I can't imagine that Trump would go in, play that card, and then just walk away. All right, so I don't think this is over. I think this is a process. And the other thing I'll say is, did the Axis of Resistance lose? Why do you think Israel's doing what it did? Were the Houthi defeated? Last time I checked, the Houthi were part of the Axis of Resistance. The last time I checked, Houthi missiles kept raining down on Israel. And Israel couldn't do a damn thing about it. And the United States couldn't do a damn thing about it. The United Kingdom couldn't do a damn thing about it. And Houthi missiles will continue to rain down until there's a ceasefire. Oh, yeah. Hezbollah. Was Hezbollah defeated? There was a ceasefire, but Hezbollah still exists. Their militia still exists. And Israel's done something really stupid. Occupied southern Lebanese territory, which legitimizes the Hezbollah resistance. This isn't about Hezbollah attacking Israel anymore. It's going to be about Hezbollah ejecting the illegal Israeli occupation. Is the Axis of Resistance really defeated, and did they really lose? You got to look at the totality of the thing. I think the Axis of Resistance took a big hit when Israel collapsed. Big hit. Iran is licking its wounds. Even when the head of the IRGC says, yeah, this is a big problem for this. Is a big we took a big defeat in Syria. It's a problem for us. It complicates what we're trying to do with Hezbollah, etc. There's no doubt that there's a problem here. But to sit there and say the Axis of Resistance got their asses kicked. No, they didn't. Bashar al-Assad's regime collapsed. And that's a problem for the Axis of Resistance. But the last time I checked, Hezbollah, it wasn't Hezbollah that asked for the ceasefire with Israel. It was Israel that asked for the ceasefire with Hezbollah because the 7th Armored Brigade attempted to storm a village and got its ass kicked. The Golani Brigade attempted to back them up with a flanking maneuver and got their ass kicked. And the Agaz Special Operations Force was operating the hills, getting their ass kicked. And the Israeli reserves piling up said, we don't want to go there. And the Israeli command turned to Netanyahu and said, we got to get a ceasefire. We got to have a pause here. Oh, that's a different picture. So Israel didn't win against the Lebanese, against Hezbollah. Now, there's a complicated political reality in Lebanon because Hezbollah isn't Lebanon. It's part of the Lebanese government, but there's Sunni and Christians and Druze, and there's other Shia, Amal, who's not Hezbollah, and they have a say. And they were saying, we don't want this conflict between Hezbollah and Israel to become a conflict for Lebanon. We have enough problems as it is. And because Hezbollah is a responsible member of the Lebanese government, Hezbollah agreed to the ceasefire. And they needed a ceasefire. Nasrallah was dead. They're trying to regroup from the loss of that man. Their infrastructure took some hits. They're trying to regroup, complicating the ability to regroup. Now the umbilical cord to Iran has been cut. So it's not all roses for Hezbollah, but they're not defeated. And ask the 7th Armored Brigade how defeated Hezbollah was when those Hezbollah fighters came up out of the ground and kicked their ass. So I don't buy into that Axis of Resistance has been defeated and all that. The Houthi were never defeated. Mm-mm. Their missiles continued to rain down, and there's not a damn thing Israel could do about it. The beauty of what Trump has done here, though, if he can pull this off, and again, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a ceasefire. I just don't think Trump is going to roll over and say, oh, my God, Ben-Gvir is unhappy. I'll pee on myself and go away. That's what dogs do, except Maverick. He tends to pee on everybody else. But so I don't see Trump giving up on this one. But he might. Who knows? Miriam Adelson's $100 million may have said, make an effort and then walk away. We don't know. We'll see. But I will say, who amongst us thought that when Trump said there will be hell to pay, that he was targeting Israel instead of Hamas? Did you think? I didn't think.
No.
I think every one of us said he's talking about holding Hamas accountable. He's talking about bullying Hamas. He's talking about this. Nope, he was talking about bullying Netanyahu and the Israelis. And he sort of gave that away when he retweeted Jeffrey Sachs. That was like the big take. It was like, ooh, different game being played here. So I don't think Trump's walking away from this one. He has a couple of days left to fix it. The Axis of Resistance, here's the opportunity for Trump. He couldn't defeat the Houthi. Nobody could defeat the Houthi. But Houthi, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, I don't mean to be disrespectful. This is just me, the American, Ansarallah. They have said when the aid starts flowing into Gaza, when there's a ceasefire, we'll stop firing missiles. This is the genius of what's happened here. Because if this ceasefire holds, Trump doesn't have to worry about defeating Ansarallah. Ansarallah will pull back and say, we have done our job. And I'll tell you what, if you're in the Arab world, if you're in the pro-Palestinian, you better be lighting candles for Ansarallah every night for the heroism and the sacrifice and the courage and the resilience and the steadfastness that they have brought to this entire effort. They shut the Israeli economy down, shut it down. They kept firing missiles when Iran stopped firing missiles. Ansarallah never gave up. No matter what we brought at them, they kept going. So they're some of the real heroes here. The other real hero here is Hamas. And I have to say that one of the things I said is when Syria fell is that Hamas will be compelled to accept a ceasefire. But I thought that it would be a defeat for Hamas. Hamas is coming out of this victorious. Again, I mean, it's not the victory that we're used to. But I said early on, all Hamas has to do to win is survive. When Israel sets the conditions of victory as the physical destruction of Hamas as a military organization and the eradication of Hamas as a political movement, this ceasefire keeps the military organization in and Hamas politically not just viable, but looking pretty good. That's a strategic defeat for Israel. Hamas isn't defeated. They prove that they can defend every square inch of Gaza, and that up until the end, they're killing Israelis. Just this last week, they took out a whole bunch of Israelis. I think it was IEDs that got them, or maybe some sort of a coordinated ambush, but they're killing Israelis. Israel didn't conquer Gaza. And I think Hamas comes out of this pretty good. And here's the thing. Israel is going to be looking at the West Bank and expanding. Anytime you get a cornered rabid dog like Israel that's been denied access to one neighbor's yard, but another neighbor's yard, they're going to turn on that neighbor that they can't. And Israel is going to turn on the West Bank to prove that they're manly and they're this and they're that and all that. The loser here is going to be the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority had been gambling that Hamas was going to be defeated. Remember, the Palestinian Authority is literally Israel. That's it. Abu Mazen is an Israeli stooge. Everybody who receives their paychecks from a Palestinian Authority are on the Israeli payday. The Palestinian security forces are traitors to their people. But they were hoping that Hamas would lose, that Hamas would be diminished. Now they realize that Hamas is bigger in the minds of the Palestinian people than they will ever be. And now when Israel goes into the West Bank and the fighters in Jenin stand up and start resisting, that's the end of the Palestinian Authority, which means now that Hamas will be able to have a bigger seat at whatever the table is when they talk about a Palestinian state, whatever form that's going to take. Hamas is not out of the picture anymore. Hamas is very much alive and well and living. So this is a very complicated situation. But I would say that if you're a geopolitical analyst specialized in the Middle East, we all probably need to unplug, sit back, and reevaluate the total picture. Don't become focused on a ceasefire in Gaza. Don't become focused on this. Look at the whole picture. Iran is about ready to have a negotiation with Trump about getting rid of their nuclear weapons capability or potential. Who saw that coming? No one. But it's real now. Everybody's talking about it. Even the Russians are whispering that that is in the works. The Iranians are saying, we're ready to have that discussion. 6 months ago, nobody would have said Iran's ready to have that discussion. They're ready to have that discussion now. If Israel leaves southern Lebanon, Hezbollah is going to be confronted with some real problems, such as they're going to be compelled to give up their militia, and their political party is going to have to go with it because they're part of a Lebanese government that's saying you have to give up that militia. Complicated picture, but stability in the north. Hamas is real. It's there. It's going to be something. And Israel is still going to collapse. Israel's not going to recover from this. Who's going to invest in Israel? You know that Trump is going to run around and try and get the Saudis to come in, but the Saudis have said that they won't normalize relations until there's a Palestinian state whose capital is East Jerusalem. I thought that Saudi Arabia might back away from that if Hamas was fundamentally defeated, if Gaza was occupied. How can Saudi Arabia back away from the courage of Hamas right now? Who in the Arab world now can sit there and say, yeah, we're going to sell that out? Politically, it's impossible for people now to disassociate themselves from the sacrifice made by the Gazans. And I think this changes and complicates the entire picture. Israel's not out of the water here. And I think that's one of the reasons why Ben-Gvir and company are so damn upset, because they are heading down a path that we don't know how it's going to end. But I think we know that at the finish line, Ben-Gvir's ilk isn't going to be crossing it, that they have run their course. They are a minority in a minority government, and they are going to be blamed. Watch what happens when the truth of the hostages comes out. Watch how quickly Ben-Gvir is eradicated as a political force inside Israel. And he knows that. That's why he can't let this deal go forward. That's why he can't let the hostages come home, because he will be held accountable personally for every dead hostage and for every day those hostages were captive.
Well, you mentioned a number of ass kickings, but speaking of an ass kicking that's been ongoing for the last couple of years, we're talking about Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the press. Max Blumenthal just had a interaction with
Interaction.
Blinken. So let's take a look, and I'm interested to get your reactions, and then maybe some reflections about this foreign policy in retrospect, now that we're almost on the other side of the Biden administration.
300 reporters in Gaza were on the receiving end of your bombs. Why did you keep the bombs flowing when we had a deal in May? We all knew we had a deal. Everyone in this room knows we had a deal, Tony, and you kept the bombs flowing. Why did you sacrifice the rules-based order on the mantle of your commitment to Zionism? Why did you allow my friends to be massacred? Why did you allow my friends' homes in Gaza to be destroyed when we had a deal in May? You helped destroy our religion, Judaism, by associating it with fascism. You waved the white flag before
We'll have the time to take
Netanyahu.
questions at the end.
You waved the white flag before Israeli fascism.
We'll have the time to take questions
Your
at the end.
father-in-law was an Israel lobbyist. Your grandfather was an Israel lobbyist. Are you compromised by Israel? Why did you allow the Holocaust of our time to happen? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? You too, Matt. You smirked through the whole thing every day. You smirked through a genocide.
Thank you.
I love that he got to get on Matt right there at the end.
Count
Yeah,
Smirkala.
best part.
Yeah,
Count
that's,
Smirkula. That's ours. I think our ridiculous producer came up with Count Smirkula.
yeah, yeah. That's amazing work. I don't know if you guys had the video of Sam Husseini as well.
We do. But that was good. Spoiler alert.
Oh, my bad.
Spoiler
My
alert.
bad.
We should
Let's play
play
the
it
video
now.
now. Chime in. Yeah, play the video now. Chime in because I have a lot to say on there. I'm very
Let's
impressed
do
by
it.
this.
But let's watch Sam. And
The names of those who have been arbitrarily detained and unfairly held hostage, unjustly held hostage, and bringing them home, returning them to their families, returning them to their loved ones. Finally,
Get your hands off
this
me.
morning,
Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Get your hands off me. Answer a damn question.
I look
Do you know
forward to
about the
answering
Hannibal
questions.
Directive? Do you know about Israel's nuclear weapons? Everybody from the ICJ. I'm sitting here quietly, and now I'm being manhandled by 2 or 3 people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I'm asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions until I ask him
please, sir,
questions.
respect the process. We'll have opportunity to take
Wasn't the
questions.
wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders. You
Please, sir, respect the process. Thank you.
oh, respect the process. Respect the process. While everybody from Amnesty International. From Amnesty International to the ICJ is saying that Israel's doing genocide and extermination. You're telling me to respect the process. Criminal, why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague? Why aren't you in The Hague?
somebody in the comments said Sam is the master of dead weight. Sam
Yeah.
always like turns into a corpse when they carry him out of the room. But a big thank you to Sam and Max for doing what so many of us wish we could, and so many people, and for doing what so many people have had the opportunity to do and haven't. So thank you for that. But I do want everybody's reactions and reflections.
Yeah, I know that had to be extremely cathartic by Max and Sam Husseini after following the administration. And I can't help but to be impressed at the pure Chad behavior that we've seen there. And I say it all the time, for all the people, especially for all the people who push like bro masculinity ideology, that's like the main thing you care about because you don't know how to fight. I'm a martial artist, so we don't care about that kind of stuff. But let's say that's what you care about, who's alpha, who's not. You guys understand what Sam Husseini and Max Blumenthal did is the most alpha male behavior they can possibly demonstrate. That is top tier alpha shit right there. You want to know who's the beta? You want to know who's the weak beta male? The weak beta male is the guy who's subservient. The security guards, for example. And it's fine. And I go on this rant all the time on RBN, but it's so strange to me how it's twisted. Where there's a lot of these like alpha bros who think that you're alpha if you don't stand out. If you follow the rules, you suck up to Elon Musk, you suck his dick, you suck the dick of billionaires, you stand in line with the establishment. They think that is the way, they think that makes you alpha. They think fall in line and being some establishment sellout. No, to me, not doing your job as a man to advance our species to advance society. To not call out evil is the most beta behavior, the most alpha behavior, the most behavior that is the most admirable is what you see there. Not the people talking about process. You gotta respect. There are people. They are war criminals. These people are war criminals, and they talking about, oh, you're disturbing the process. What kind of man are you? You're not a patriot. They think they're patriots. What kind of patriot is okay with criminals in our government? I apologize for my language. I got fired.
Oh, you're right.
Go ahead.
And an aside, so just speaking of alphas and betas, the beta that called security on Sam was none other than Matt Miller.
Of course.
He might even be lower down the totem pole. I think we got to go
like
all the way to like Omega, or I don't know what the.
Well, there's I learned the term beta cook. I think that probably defines Miller and Blinken. But I'll make this second point too. It defines two things. One, Max Blumenthal is a friend of mine. Thank God.
Tell him to respond to my email.
Well, I'll ask him, but I can't tell Max anything because he's apparently an alpha male. And all I can say is I don't ever want Max Blumenthal to turn his sights on me because he is a master of the language, the master of rhetoric, the master of research. If I've ever screwed up and tried to hide it, and Max just said, I'm going to uncover it, he'll uncover it, and then he'll call me out on it in a way that you can't respond to his stuff because I've watched him over the years. When he gets on a rant, I mean, he combines Bill Buckley and Christopher Hitchens. Those two come in, and Max Blumenthal is sort of the young Jewish version of those two guys. I'd even throw in Gore Vidal in terms of his master of the language, his mastery of the language, his ability to run these perfect sentences together that are absolutely devastating. Every word that Max Blumenthal said in his attack on Blinken was accurate, ingenious. But here's the second thing I want to talk about. You want to talk about beta cucks. Every single journalist in there. What we need to do is to get the names of every journalist in that room who sat on their ass while this happened. This was their chance to stand up and applaud Max Blumenthal. And when Sam Husseini was dragged out, they should have all have left and let Tony Blinken standing there with an empty room speaking crap to nothing because every word he says is irrelevant. In a couple of days, he's history and he will hopefully be arrested. He won't go to The Hague. That means that we have foregone our duties as Americans. He has violated the Constitution of the United States. When they investigate how he seized control of the national security and foreign policy apparatus when Biden went brain dead, and Biden is literally brain dead. They have to pump him up on all sorts of crap to let him appear to be this, but his normal function mode is sleep and slur. The reporters in that room should all be shamed, should be called out. I'm not talking about doxing them. I don't believe in doxing. I don't want people harassing them at home, but their professionalism should forever be stained by their willingness to sit there and do nothing. I mean, I saw one of the journalists. Now, was she upset because Sam Husseini might have kicked her going by? Or was she upset that our fellow journalist was being manhandled, carried out? And if she was upset about him being carried out, she should have stood up and said, carry me out. And then one by one, I am Spartacus. That was their chance, one by one, to stand up and shout down Blinken and make security carry them out. And as they go by Matt Miller, say, up yours, you little smirking son of a bitch. This is what we saw here in the State Department is America at its worst. There's no free speech in America. There's none whatsoever. These diplomats don't stand for anything good. They don't stand for democracy. They stand for genocide and the defense of genocide. And today, or the press conference, I don't know, was this today that this happened?
Yes, it was this morning.
Yep.
Today, this press conference today was an administration defending genocide. Mm-hmm. No reporter in there should have tolerated this. They should have all stood up and said, no, answer the question. We have questions. You don't get to dictate the narrative. You're done. Your history. We're going to show the world what your legacy is before you leave. But they didn't do that because they're beta cooks. Every single one of them, except Max Blumenthal and Sam Husseini. They deserve, what's that, alpha male status? Yeah.
That's hilarious.
They're all getting clipped. I'm just writing down the timestamps. Anyway, we do have a little bit of breaking news. Ben-Gvir, it looks like he is either about to resign or he has already resigned. So there's a
Here
lot
it goes.
huge ripping apart. We have the hostage family members that are petitioning Netanyahu right now, saying we want the ceasefire, we want it early. And Ben-Gvir, and Ben-Gvir is saying no ceasefire or we walk. Him and 4 of his party.
And now he walked, and if he walks and the coalition collapses, again, guys, I don't know what Donald Trump's doing. I know what he's capable of doing, and I think phone calls will be made to center moderates, and he will tell them on January 20th, I'm the president of the United States. If you want to be politically viable in Israel, you're going to make an interim coalition that keeps Netanyahu as the prime minister, so that the ceasefire goes through. Ben-Gvir's gone. Do not allow Netanyahu's government to collapse. I need somebody to step up. I need somebody to fill the gap. I need a government to make this ceasefire happen. I just don't see Donald Trump walking away from this. I don't see him allowing his reputation to go out there. He's the biggest egomaniac in the world. Donald Trump is a narcissist writ large. You think he's going to commit to something, say he's going to do something, and let it fall apart because of a fat, stupid son of a bitch named Ben-Gvir? No. And he despises Netanyahu, but right now he owns Netanyahu. So I just think there's a lot of play between now and the 19th. And the fact that Ben-Gvir withdrew today, that's a good thing. See, if he had dragged this thing on until the 19th, then he would have presented Trump with chaos and all. He's gone today. If this is true, he's gone today. Trump has time to fix this with some phone calls. Send his non-envoy in to sit down with people and read them the riot act. I don't think, again, the way Haaretz described what went on behind the scenes with this envoy, there's no diplomacy taking place here. It's a simple, old-fashioned American ass kicking, where he went in there, he said, sit down, shut up, do this. And they did it. Now Ben-Gvir's, he's gone. And again, I have confidence that Donald Trump on this one holds all the cards. The Israelis hold no cards. No card. What card do the Israelis hold? Not a single one. Their economy is dependent upon us. Their military is dependent upon us. Benjamin Netanyahu's political survival is dependent upon us. There's not one thing the Israelis can do that's independent of our dominance. And the man that's going to control all those strings is named Donald Trump on January 20th. And Trump, if you have studied him, he doesn't like to have people embarrass him. Trump is a counterpuncher. And if Netanyahu tries to embarrass Donald Trump's not Barack Obama. Donald Trump's not Joe Biden. Donald Trump was knock his frickin' teeth right out of his mouth, political teeth. So I just think that between now and the 19th, there's a lot of politics that have to go through here. But Donald Trump's in the driver's seat if he wants to be in the driver's seat. And that's the spin I'm putting on it.
Well, Scott, I do know you have to take off, and it's a little bit after that. So if you need to leave, that's perfectly fine. But give us your final thoughts.
I can stay for 12 more minutes, so I'd like to hear Nick and John and you.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm taking a wait and see posture because I will 100% admit I did admit on RBN I was extremely shocked to see Trump actually push for a ceasefire. I still 100% believe he's going to be horrible for Palestine and for the resistance and just anti-imperialist principles as a whole. So we will see where that will go. But I know one thing for damn sure. And this is something that I was 100% on point on. It's when I explained to the media sans and the pathetic, uncommitted movement with those pathetic, I'm sorry, but the pathetic Palestinians who got kicked off the stage of the DNC. But like, all right, I know I was kicked off the stage of the DNC, but I'm still going to support the people who kicked me off the stage. Those people should never be taken seriously ever again, because there's one thing I would say, that if Kamala won, that Ben-Gvir stunt, that's the whole ceasefire thing's over. Like, there's no ceasefire in Kamala won, and they was exposed worse than ever because it was Blinken every day and Count Smerkla every day that was lying to the people. And I think, Scott, you mentioned this earlier. They was lying to the people, saying that Hamas was the reason why there wasn't the agreed upon deal that you explained was said in May, was because every condition that Israel did not want that they agreed on now was blocking before, and the Biden administration was actively blaming Hamas, giving Israel literally no reason to negotiate or agree with the deal. That was the point of the Biden administration, was to provide cover and help Israel avoid ceasefire deals. But Trump definitely sped up the process of having these ceasefires. I will be very interested, and I won't have a very solid opinion until maybe a week or two after inauguration to see what he does to the rebelling Ben-Gvir, to see if there was any quid pro quo. But I will 100% admit that I did not see Trump starting a cease deal. That completely caught me off guard, so I'm kind of a wait and see mode because of that. But there's one thing that's 100% clear that I made over and over again. I said it during my speech in Chicago. I explained that all the people like Mehdi Hassan and a billion countless others that was saying that, oh, well, Trump's going to be worse on Gaza. I explained that if you said that Donald Trump was going to be worse in Gaza than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that's genocide denial. I said it 1,000 times. It's genocide denial to claim that Trump will be worse because that's denying the destruction that the Biden regime already set on Gaza. So there's no way that Trump could factually be worse because the reality is over the last 78 years, there haven't been a single president worse in the history of the United States on Gaza than the Biden administration because he led to the destruction of Gaza. So all the people who was arguing that Biden was the lesser evil, they take the biggest L. I take an L, I think a small L, like a undercase, lowercase L, because I didn't predict Trump doing that. But the people who argue that organizing within the Democratic Party was the way to do this should never, ever be taken seriously ever again, looking right at Bernie Sanders and them. Go ahead, Sarah.
Don't worry, he's going on Hassan, so he's cool again.
And that was such a pathetic softball interview. You guys saw what happened when Ro Khanna came on my show. Imagine you have Bernie Sanders, this guy who claimed to be anti-war. He claimed to be anti-war. He supported the Ukraine war. You have Bernie Sanders on your show. You don't say anything about it. You don't question him at all over his. Anyway, that's the problem with the United States left, and exactly why the United States left is a joke. But that's a side point. Sorry.
Yeah.
I know you guys to those places in the first place on Saturday night.
What are you doing?
I'm going to the Peace Ball in Washington, D.C.
What?
It's a
my
big.
God, Scott, you're like a bureaucrat now.
No. I'm doing it because I was invited by somebody I respect. But when I looked at Mehdi Hassan's going to be there.
Oh, shit.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
If these old bones, if there's a few people that I believe there's capability of violence still coming forth. And Mehdi Hassan is one of them. So my daughters are accompanying me. Pardon?
He's going to be at the Peace Ball.
Correct
me if I'm wrong, but didn't he support the Ukraine war?
Look, there's so many people in this Peace Ball that aren't people. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm gonna basically have a Diet Coke in my hand, and I'm going to be every time somebody comes to talk to me, I'm going to be sucking on that Diet Coke to prevent any words coming out of my mouth. And my daughters are going to be there. They have a syringe with a mild narcotic in it or whatever. And if I start, but it's going to be interesting because I don't like Mehdi Hassan. I despise him. In fact, I despise everything about him. Read Mehdi the Riot Act. Okay, yeah. I know I can't because then he'll respond in his ridiculous British accent, and then I want to kill him. So, so it's going to be an interesting night. I'm going to be dancing around, keeping myself away from them, meeting the people that I do want to meet. For instance, Medaya Benjamin, who I have a lot of respect for, she's going to be there. My daughter wants to meet Angela Davis, who will be there.
Oh, yeah. I would think I would like to meet Angela Davis.
Yeah, I want to meet Angela. I mean, she's part of American history. Yeah. So
part of American.
This will be interesting on Saturday night to do that. But Nick, you're 100% correct about calling out hypocrites and calling out people who claim to be one thing, and the Palestinian community is full of hypocrites. The Palestinian support community, I should say. And it got me in trouble. I went down to South Florida to meet with I can't call it a pro-Palestinian community, but it was mainly an anti-Assad community is what it turned out to be. And I still think I'm in hot water with them, and rightfully so, because I've called out their bullshit on praising the fall of Assad. These people support HTS. And to me, that's a huge problem. And they're saying,
it's wild that people got mad at you because I talked to many Palestinian activists, and they say the same thing. Like this idea that there's like this giant anti-apartheid Israel movement that's completely getting along with each other. That's not true. There are bourgeoisie sellout elements of the Palestinian resistance that I talk to people in the Palestinian community network. I know many activists, I won't name my name, that they say this is one of their biggest struggles, not like the Zionists, but the pro-Assadists. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
Sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please
the CAIR Muslims, the CAIR Muslims. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about these people that claim to be supporting Palestine is when I confronted them with what the impact towards the creation, the fulfillment of a Palestinian state, what the impact of the collapse of the Axis of resistance of Syria and all that meant for that, they said that's okay. Palestine lives in our heart, and we can survive another 60 years before and I'm like, then never talk about Palestine again, ever. If it lives in your heart and you're willing to wait 60 years, and I don't want to hear from you until 59 years, 11 months, and 30 days, and 23 hours. Because other than that, your voice doesn't matter. If you're claiming to be pro-Palestine and you're not advocating on a daily basis for the creation of a Palestinian state today, right now, then you're not pro-Palestine. You're not. Now, you can be realistic and say, all right, there's a negotiation. We know it's not going to happen today, but there's a negotiation. There's a pathway. We're looking for a pathway. Okay, at least you're working to get it done. But if you're going to reconcile yourself to say, no, it's okay that a bunch of head-chopping Al-Qaeda kooks took over Syria, and that's okay, we're going to celebrate that and the rise of Turkey and let Turkey. I mean, again, these guys are like, we're Syrian nationalists. Well, what's your strategy? We're going to let Turkey take over Syria. How can you call yourself a Syrian nationalist if you're okay with Turkey? There's so much hypocrisy and contradiction in that crowd. My favorite is we're reasonable moderates, but we want Sharia law. I'm like, but what about the people that don't want Sharia law?
They don't
What
care.
about the people? You can't say that you can't sit there in front of me in the United States of America and try to convince me that you're some reasonable Muslim that can live in peace with the world, and then sit there and say, no, we want Sharia law. Because you know what Sharia law is in Syria? It's head chopping.
Yeah.
It's stoning the women. It's, tearing down the Christian things. They just had one of their big HTS leaders come out and say, stop making videos of your crime. Go do it. We want you to hunt them down and kill them. No, but stop making videos and posting on it because it's inconvenient to us. No, the truth should be inconvenient if it's meant to be inconvenient. But every single one of you, and I'm speaking to you guys because I know some of you are watching this right now, shame on you. The fact that you haven't come out now and apologized for the stance you took in support of the downfall of Assad and the empowerment of HTS, that you're not saying, I will lead the charge into Syria, not to support this new government, but to take it down. Al-Qaeda is an enemy to the world, an enemy to Islam, an enemy to the United States. And you're sitting there saying, this is good? No, it's not. And it can never be supported. And you can never even allow a nuance on that. You can say what you want about Assad. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not buying into half the crap they say. I'll tell you, when I was a weapons inspector in Iraq, I heard more stories about Saddam Hussein, the red rooms and this and that and the other thing. Then Saddam got toppled and they went in there, and it turned out about 90% of the stuff they said about him was a lie. And the remaining 10% was a gross exaggeration. And I don't know what the truth is of Assad yet. I don't know. Hopefully it'll come out. But I can guarantee you it ain't as bad as these Muslim Brotherhood fanatics say it was. The same thing with the Hamas 1982. Assad came in and butchered 40,000 people. How about you guys attacked a military academy and slaughtered officers and their families first? You never bring that one up. That was started when you rose up and butchered a military academy people and their families. And this is after Hafez al-Assad said, you can't do this. And you did it. And he said, then you're done. We're eradicating you. We're evicting you. And you're going to cry now that you started off by chopping off heads of people, and then Assad said, no more head chopping, get the hell out of Syria. I have no sympathy for anybody who supported the head chopping in 1982 and then fled and have cried, came to the United States. All I hear, Hamas, it's horrible what he did, horrible. No, you're horrible. The Muslim Brotherhood is horrible. Islamic extremism is horrible. Al-Qaeda is horrible. And yet you Americans who are of Syrian descent are cheering this. Get the hell out of my country. I'm sorry. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in freedom of association. But when you say you associate with Al Qaeda, that's the step too far.
Regarding your take, and I'll be quick, and I'll pass to Sarah and John. Regarding those Palestinians that say it's about the spirit of resistance, because when you explain to them how the fall of Assad greatly cripples the axis of resistance, they always, and you bring up how you are making it less likely to have a free Palestine. They'll say what you're talking about, Scott. And I had Palestinian roundtables on RBN. I had countless Palestinian activists who have as strong as a critique of the bourgeoisie elements in their movement as they do Zionists. They said on my show that was one of the biggest threats that they have to deal with it, are the bourgeoisie Zionists. And there was a famous Hawaiian indigenous activist, I listened to a lot of her speeches, Hunani K. Trask, and she explained how she battled with a lot of bourgeoisie Hawaiians who accepted the United States colonizing their state. And she would say that these people in the bourgeoisie elements of the resistance will make excuses for why they failed to properly resist their occupier. They will say, well, technically, resistance, it's a spirit of resistance. Like, there's a spirit of resistance. We can't actually resist. We got to believe in the spirit of resistance, the spirit of having your sovereignty. And the response of Hunani K. Trask was, fuck the spirit of resistance. The only thing that matters is actually resisting.
Right now.
Yeah, and that's, and to Scott's point, that's the same problem that in people who get mad at Scott, they are out of touch, because that's a critique that is often mentioned within the Palestinian community. Go back and watch my Palestinian roundtables and listen to how frustrated they was with the Palestinian Authority, where there was with Rashid Tlaib. They can't stand these people. They view them as sellouts and Zionist enablers. So Scott is 100% on point, and there are these bourgeoisie elements of all resistance movements, like the Hawaiian indigenous movements. We had bourgeoisie elements of the civil rights era. These are the people who thought MLK was too extreme. They were extremely critical of Malcolm X. It will always exist, and it's extremely important for us to continue to call them out. So don't fall for the nonsense wherever you see people say, oh, Scott, don't say this. Oh, come on, you can't crit. No. It's as legit as it comes. Anyway, sorry for the rant. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sure, I got to go, but could you give me one 30-second roundup? I don't want to mention the name because I don't want to give him any credit in chat that doesn't. There's a person in there that continuously says, well, Scott, what about the United States? Scott, why aren't you standing up to America? Fuck you. If you don't think that I have paid a heavy price by standing up to American empire, then you don't know a fucking thing about me. All right? If you don't think that I've sacrificed everything to speak out against the excesses of American foreign policy, then fuck you. All right? And I see this guy constantly in all the things, and he's doing the same sniping over and over and over again. Meet me face to face, okay? If you think that I'm somebody who is sold out to America, meet me face to face, and I'll explain it to you patiently, non-violently, but I'll do it in a way that there will be no mistake in your bones what a big mistake you have made. Okay, don't you ever call me out for being a servant of American imperialism or a servant of the USA movement. All right? I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And domestic means the government when it exceeds its authority and its power. Don't you ever do that. And that, you can do what you want. You're in the chat and all that stuff, but I'm calling you out, Eric Suarez. Call him out. Hold him accountable. Ban him from every fucking chat there is if he continues this bullshit. Either have the balls to meet me face to face and say it to my face, but don't snipe at me from a chat room. Now I have to go and pick up my wife and get in. So thank you for inviting me to your show, and talk to you later.
Thanks for keeping the guests in line, Scott. It's a service that we don't always want to do. So having Scott keep people in line, I think
that's true.
It doesn't hurt.
But I will say that I did agree. I think I disagree with Scott quite a bit. I think he's a little bit soft. And I didn't really want to push back on the stream, but I don't like this ceasefire. I'm not going to refuse it. I don't think that they shouldn't accept it, but I'm not really happy. And I do understand that the idea that the Palestinians are the focal point and that their well-being needs to come first right now. But people get really fixated and hyper focused on either whether it's Syria or Lebanon or Palestine. And I'm like, we got to look at this holistically and what happens with the whole region now as a whole, because, and I didn't get to cover it with Scott, and that doesn't bother me, but maybe Nick has some thoughts about I don't know if you guys read, but it came out on the 7th, the Nagel committee, that's an Israeli government committee inside, said that they need to start getting ready for war with Turkey. So, I mean, the ceasefire for me, almost all of their ceasefires strike me as reprieves for them. Like, kind of regrouping, rearming, replanning, all of it. Just kind of getting it back together. This idea, and I'm not sure, maybe you guys could shed light, but this idea that somehow after those 16 months that Hamas is bigger and more fortified than ever, where are we getting this info? Where is this coming from?
I think the information that Scott quoted came from, and I think he quoted Anthony Blinken in particular. I think that's where the general surge information, but 100% that Israel will be continuing their war, which is why I said that while I'm happy for the people celebrating in Gaza, our job as people who live in the empire is to see the end of Zionism. The idea of sitting back and waiting for the axis of resistance is kind of unrealistic. We need to do our job as enemies from within, because of the fact that we're not happy with the ceasefire. Because I don't think, even with a theoretical ceasefire, that Israel will ever stop their apartheid activity. Listen, you guys hear what the younger generation of Zionists believe? Like when they was interviewed in the street by Abby Martin, for example. Do you guys think this is the end?
No.
This is why people think I'm crazy. I know I'm just asking rhetorically, but people say on Twitter, I said Israel need to be well, I'll be careful on channel, but let's say dismantled. Because the next generation of Israelis, and I've seen this in countless interviews. There these TikTok videos I see where people like chat with Israelis and they ask them questions and they say crazy things. Like there's this Palestinian dude that go on stream and he get called all these racist guys. The next generation of Israelis is full of Ben-Gvirs. Like it's an entire generation of Ben-Gvir. So we have to call, and we got to fight for the destruction of Israel, because it's only going to get worse. I have seen it get worse my entire life, especially ever since I've been covering. But go ahead, Sarah.
You're absolutely right. That's right. The people that blocked the water, the people that protested about the prisoner rape stuff, all of those things were all young people. These fascists, like they're kind of like these hooligans. They're all young people. They're the young Israelis. I was calling them goat people because they really look like the hills have eyes. But they're a lot of them live out in like these deserted areas. They're literal like creepy little hills have eyes fascists. And you're exactly right. They're the people that Abby Martin spoke to when we started watching it and growing up on it. 2014, 15, and 16. Well, maybe we didn't start them, but that's when it started to really pick up. But yeah, those are the people that are in charge now. They're MPs.
Yeah, I think the notion that
people that are in the IDF right now, and John Patrick, I'll pass right to you. Yeah, but the people in the IDF right now, you know, the people doing their selective service, they're going, when they grow up and they become politicians, if Israel's still around, they're going to be the craziest generation of. These are the people who did the genocide. Like, you know how many Israeli politicians in 15 years is going to run? I was a war hero of Gaza. We're going to have, if you guys think this generation of Israel, this is the liberal delusion. I know none of us believe this, but the liberal delusion is that we just need to reform Israel. That if we get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, did the Bernie Sanders believe? No, even if Benjamin Netanyahu gone, even if the entire Israeli government fall apart, the next generation of Israelis are crazy, and they're going to make Benjamin. They're gonna replicate everything Ben-Gvir does. Sorry, John. Go. I know you about time. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, I'm very hesitant to put out there that this ceasefire means that there's going to be like a cessation of chaos, or that things will kind of ease up a little bit, because as you guys both noted, like we're seeing these contradictions come to the fore more and more. And it's worth mentioning that right after the ceasefire in Lebanon, that's when we saw the collapse of Syria, right? And then this expansion of Israel into the Golan Heights. So it's that they're always kind of looking for these different pressure valves where they can relieve pressure and then continue their experiment of trying to establish a greater Israel. And that will be their ultimate goal politically. I mean, I just don't see them, as you said, Nick, becoming more liberalized or more. And so it's only downhill. And I think that we also need to be realistic when it comes to the Trump administration. I see Trump, I understood the things that Scott was saying, and I have some level of hope that it can maybe create a dynamic where the axis of resistance continues to be able to fight, and Israel is increasingly put in a tougher position. But it's also important to remember that Trump has a realpolitik approach when it comes to U.S. imperialism. It's U.S. imperialism via realpolitik. And while the Biden administration was U.S. imperialism via its own kind of idea of establishing a liberal world order, still imperialism, Trump just has a bit of a different approach to it. And so I think that it does make sense that he would maybe try to, of course, he's talked about easing tensions when it comes to Ukraine. That's a whole nother subject. But they're going to pivot to where Trump's base and where the U.S. Foreign policy establishment itself sees as the most vulnerable, which is Latin America, which is countries like Venezuela and Cuba. So I'm extremely hesitant to hold out that much hope that Trump will actually bring any type of message or foreign policy that really puts the pressure on Israel. If it does, I think it's more inadvertent and based on an approach to foreign policy that's realpolitik, and maybe just not as focused on getting themselves involved with navigating adjudicating the war that's going on in Gaza.
Yeah, well said.
But I think
All
that's
right.
really all the time. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know you have to go as well. I don't know what we're up to this weekend. We're trying to get on some heavy hitters for you guys to continue to discuss this ceasefire and the implementation or not. And maybe we'll do our Sunday show. We don't know. Where in the world is Mikhail from Rebar? Who the hell knows? Like Carmen Sandiego. It's all over the place. I think he's in Cuba. No, Iraq. He's in Iraq. Who goes from Cuba to Iraq? Anyway, Nick, thank you so much. Make sure you guys subscribe to Nick on Twitter, YouTube, Revolutionary Blackout Network, and come find us in the spaces. We'll be there, ddgeopolitics.com. And we're going to leave you guys with some of the Gazan celebrations so we can end on a high note of happiness if the ceasefire goes through. All love and support to the people of Gaza and occupied Palestine. Thank you and have a good weekend.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Nick.